So in this video, I'm not only going to show you how to do oil pulling, but I'm going to answer all of these questions that I found answers to throughout my oil pulling journey. So first of all, what is oil pulling? Well, oil pulling is the practice of swishing oil in your mouth for better oral hygiene. And where does it stem from? Well, it actually stems from Ayurveda, which is the traditional Hindu system for medicine. And this includes things like diet, herbal treatment, and yogic breath. So how do you do oil pulling? Well, the process itself is really easy. You start off by taking a scoop of oil, you put it in your mouth, and you swish it around for around 15 minutes. Then, after 15 minutes, you spit it out, and that's it. You've done a oil pulling session. So there are a lot of doubters out there, and one thing that I've realized is that whenever there's a controversial woo-woo technique like oil pulling that arises, the first thing that comes to a lot of minds, including mine, is that, oh, that's not gonna work. Why would something as simple as swishing oil around your mouth and in your mouth do anything at all? We can't just toss these things out just by our own instincts. We have to try it and see if it works. So I tried it. I've already made videos on that, my 3-month experience, my understanding of what oils to use and so on. And I stuck with it because it worked. It improved my dental health in many different ways that I was amazed by. So just don't brush something off because it seems really weird or it seems like it might not work. Try it for yourself and really come to your own conclusions. You just need to brush better, floss better, use a better mouthwash, go to the dentist more often, all of these things that are so obvious. Why didn't I do those things before oil pulling? Well, I did all of those things and they didn't work. Do I really want to go to the dentist every 3 or so months to fix up the messed up mouth that I have? Or do I want to figure out a way that solves my oral hygiene on a more permanent basis? Oil pulling has been a game changer for my oral hygiene because it makes my mouth feel like I've come out of a dental cleaning session every single time that I do it. And this is why it's so obvious for me to continue oil pulling. So why hasn't your dentist recommended oil pulling to you? Well, here's the thing. When you go into dentistry, you go in to learn a skill, to then get a job, to then do that skill. So a lot of the people who go into dentistry aren't really interested in learning about the traditional ways of doing things and how people did it in the past. They're more focused on doing the craft that they've studied and practiced for many, many years. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is that I just wish modern dentistry would look into techniques like oil pulling to understand why it works, to then apply it to their modern dentistry techniques. So what makes oil pulling work? Well, there isn't an exact study that says this is why oil pulling works, but I found this study that showcases 3 reasons why oil pulling might work. The first reason is that the swishing around of the oil in your mouth creates a soap-like process which then cleans things in your mouth. The second reason that they pinpoint is that the viscosity, like thickness of the oil, sticks and grabs the bacteria in your mouth, which you then spit out. The third reason that they mention is that oils, they have antibacterial qualities, which is what creates this antibacterial effect in your mouth, removing and eliminating a lot of the bacteria in there. Does it have to be done for 15 minutes? Now, this is a comment that I got a lot in my other videos, and yeah, it has to be done for 15 minutes. Here's the thing, you gotta work up to it. If you can't do 15 minutes straight, then slowly do it in increments. Let's say you can only do it 4 or 5 minutes, have a cup right beside you, and when you feel like you need to cough or you feel like you can't stand it anymore, spit it out and wait for a couple of seconds. When you are ready to continue again, plop it back in and continue. Now, another big aspect is that people look at 15 minutes and they think, oh my God, it's such a long time. How can I slot this into my schedule? Well, oil pulling, it only uses your mouth. You can do so many other things. You can do laundry, you can clean dishes, you can go for a walk, you can scroll social media, you can just do all of these things while you are oil pulling. So don't think that you need to do oil pulling and just focus. Should oil pulling be done on a daily basis? Yes, it should be done on a daily basis. Now, if you can't do it on a daily basis, then do it as often as you can. I actually do it sometimes multiple times a day. Whenever I feel like my mouth feels kind of like bleh after like a coffee or a meal, I just oil pull and it freshens up my mouth. It's an amazing feeling that I can just get whenever my mouth just feels kind of icky. What time of day are you supposed to do oil pulling? Most people recommend doing it the first thing in the morning. Now, it also has an extra benefit the first thing in the morning if you do it then, and that is to jumpstart your metabolism. Because when you are doing oil pulling, you're also creating saliva in your mouth, which then stimulates your appetite. Now, personally, I've tried a lot of different times throughout the day to do oil pulling. I tried it a bit in the evening, I tried it after my afternoon coffee, and now I'm actually doing it the first thing in the morning. And I think that any of these times will work. So you just need to find a time that kind of suits your daily routine so that you can do it on a daily basis. So I think that is more important than doing it the first thing in the morning that most people recommend. How much oil should you be using when you are doing oil pulling? Well, this really depends because all of our mouths are different sizes, but there is a way to figure out how much oil you should be using. So first of all, just use an average amount of oil and put it in your mouth. After 15 minutes, see how your mouth feels, how your cheek feels. If your cheeks are extremely puffy and tight like this, and you can hardly move the liquid around, then use a bit less next time. If your mouth is kind of like this, and the oil really hasn't increased in size and your cheeks aren't even sore at all, then increase the amount that you're using next time. The goal is to have slightly tired cheeks after a 15-minute oil pulling session, but just not bursting at the seams, you know? So something like this. After 15 minutes. What oil should you be using? So I made a video on this where I tested a lot of different oils, and the conclusion that I came to is that all oils kind of work, but the best oils in my opinion are coconut oil, sesame seed oil, and olive oil. Does it have to be cold pressed? First of all, let's understand what cold pressed is. So cold pressed just means that you're not using any heat to extract the oil. And whenever you use heat, you actually lose some nutrients when you are extracting oil, which is why cold pressed oil is slightly higher of a quality when it comes to the amount of good nutrients that are in the oil. And personally, I've tried both. I've tried cold pressed oil and not cold pressed oil. And they both kind of work, but I would still lean to the side of cold pressed because it's usually a slightly higher grade of oil that you're getting there. How do you dispose of the oil after oil pulling? Now the biggest red flag over here that you shouldn't be doing is to spit it down your drain, because oil has a quality where it solidifies when it gets cold, and what will happen is that that oil will clog up your pipes over time. Here are the two ways that I have disposed of the oil. I've spat it out in my compost bin and tossed it out with my green organics. And the second way that I've done it is I've stored it in my fridge or freezer and tossed it out with my garbage. So why don't you just swallow the oil after oil pulling? Well, I tried it and it didn't work. I got queasy, I felt slightly nauseous after doing it, and it wasn't great. And it kind of makes sense because guess what? All of the bacteria and plaque that you're breaking down in your mouth, do you really want to consume that and let your body process it? Or do you want to extract it out of your mouth and kind of toss it away? It's pretty much the latter that you want to do. Does oil pulling replace brushing, flossing, or mouthwash? For me, it replaced mouthwash. I don't use a chemically intense mouthwash like Listerine anymore. And it also actually replaced one of my brushing sessions in the morning. So instead of brushing once in the evening and once in the morning, I just brush in the evening and I oil pull in the morning, and my mouth still feels great. Now, I tried not brushing in the evening, and you really still need some abrasive scratching with a bristle to remove some of that initial plaque. I actually don't have a big flossing routine to begin with. I was only doing it a lot when I was trying to really solve my oral hygiene issues, but right now I kind of just spot floss, and I use this metal claw to get into some specific nooks and crannies that work really well for me. I also use a tongue scraper, which is amazing and gets a lot of gunk off your tongue, which contributes to the bad breath that I used to have. So purely oil pulling cannot replace everything, but it can replace some things in your oral hygiene routine. Does oil pulling fix bad breath? Yes, it does fix bad breath. It fixed my bad breath. Now, oil pulling is not the only thing that you should be doing to fight bad breath. You still need to drink a lot of water, you still need to have a good brushing routine, you still need to scrape your tongue to make sure that you don't have a lot of bacteria sitting on your tongue, and you still need to have a healthy diet to combat bad breath. Oil pulling is not a silver bullet against bad breath. And only after doing all of those things can you add oil pulling on top, and then it will allow you to consistently have good breath. And studies also back this up, saying that oil pulling therapy has been equally effective like chlorhexidine on halitosis and organisms associated with halitosis. So I don't really have a sponsorship for this video over here, so I thought, why not just sponsor myself? I actually have another channel on YouTube called Brewing Habits, where I talk about the delicious liquid called coffee. I break down things like the basics of coffee extraction, how to brew with different brewing devices, what filter you should be using, paper, fabric, or metal, and so on. So if you like coffee and you want to learn more about coffee, head on over to Brewing Habits on YouTube and find me there too. And now back to more questions about oil pulling. Does oil pulling fix cavities? Now, I haven't found any studies that say, yes, it does remove the cavities in your mouth, but I have found studies that say that, yes, it does reduce the amount of streptococcus. And studies also back this up, saying that there's a definitive reduction in the S mutants count in plaque and saliva after oil pulling therapy. So it does have an impact in reducing the bacteria that kind of cause cavities, but yet again, I haven't found any studies that say that it fixes cavities. Does oil pulling remove plaque? Yes. I noticed this actually just after a week or so of doing oil pulling, that my lower teeth, they were smooth. I could take my tongue and move it across the lower back part of my teeth, and they would feel like I had just left a cleaning session at the dentist. And studies also back this up, saying that oil pulling has been proven to be an effective method in reducing plaque formation and plaque-induced gingivitis. Does oil pulling treat gingivitis? Now, I have never had any big issues with my gums, but I would say after a year or so, I noticed that my gums felt fresher and healthier and kind of like more firm. Looking at the previous study mentioned, oil pulling therapy showed a reduction in the plaque index, modified gingival scores, and the total colony count of aerobic microorganisms in the plaque of adolescents with plaque-induced gingivitis. Does oil pulling whiten teeth? Now, I haven't found any specific studies that say yes, it does whiten teeth, but I do think that it does bring your teeth back to its normal form, meaning that a lot of people might have a slight small layer of plaque on top of their teeth, and whenever they are doing oil pulling, they strip that plaque down, which then reveals your natural teeth whiteness. Here's a before and after picture of me in February 2021 and me right now 3 years after with consistent daily oil pulling. And I can't really see any whitening benefits from oil pulling. So if you are trying to get whiter teeth and you want to do oil pulling because of that, I can't really recommend it. Does oil pulling loosen up fillings? Well, guess what? This mouth over here, it has like 10 plus fillings. And I've been doing oil pulling for 3 years. None of these fillings have fallen out. But here's the thing. Oil is a lubricant. And if any of these fillings have like crevices or small cracks in them, then yeah, maybe the seal between a filling and a tooth might slowly deteriorate over time. Is oil pulling expensive? No, it's around $50 a year to oil pull. I recommend buying in bulk so that you get a big jug of oil that you can use. In the grand scheme of things, oil pulling is amazing because you don't need dental cleanups anymore, you won't get cavities, and these two things alone are massive costs that you just do not want to pay. If you have come this far in the video and still haven't tried oil pulling, then you've just one thing to do. Try it. Try it for 2 weeks, 15 minutes, every single day. Don't take my word for it. Don't take your dentist's word for it. Just try it for yourself and see if it improves your oral hygiene. It did for me. It did for all of these other people who commented in my other videos, and it might work for you. But you just need to try it for yourself and see if it does. My name is Paul. That's the end of this video, and I'll see you in another one. Take care.